To the story you heard on the LBC News Bulletin, which is the cost of the policing of these protests in London. 6 or 7 weeks from Just Stop Oil on major roads in London have cost £4.5 million in 6 weeks. The protest started towards the end of April. You'll also know they've disrupted high-profile events such as the Chelsea Flower Show, rugby at Twickenham and the World Snooker Championship, although, of course, that wasn't in London. 13,770 officer shifts have been used dealing with the demonstration, costing £4.5 million. Now, last week, I was joined on the show by Dale Vince. He's the founder of the green energy firm Ecotricity. He's donated tens of thousands of pounds to Just Stop Oil. He's also made headlines through being a prominent donor to the Labour Party. Their leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says he condemns the group's actions. So I asked Dale Vince why he feels moved to give so much of his cash to the controversial protest group.
Well, I feel committed to the environment cause, Nick. I've been concerned about it since the early 90s when I dropped back in. I was a traveller living on the road. I dropped back in to build a big windmill. I started the world's first green energy company, Ecotricity, in 95. And it's bothered me greatly since then. And I've dedicated the last 25, 30 years to pursuing solutions in the big fields of life, energy, transport and food, where 80% of everybody's personal carbon footprint occurs. And energy was the biggest cause of climate emissions in our country back in the early 90s. Today, it's the second biggest, but it's still very important that we make the move to renewable energy as quickly as possible.
But what about the impact on costs, the costs of policing in the Met, the London area? Home Secretary Suella Braverman spoke about that in the Commons yesterday.
People have a right to get to work on time, free from obstruction. Yep. A right to enjoy sporting events without interruption, and a right to get to hospital. The roads belong to the British people, not a selfish minority who treat them like their personal property. The impact of these disruptors is huge. Over the last 6 weeks alone, Just Stop Oil has carried out 156 slow marches around London. This has required over 13,770 police officer shifts. That's over 13,000 police shifts that could have been spent stopping robbery, violent crime, or antisocial behaviour. And the cost of the taxpayer is an outrage. £4.5 million spent in just 6 weeks, on top of the £14 million spent last year. The police must be able to stop this happening, and it's our job in government to give them the powers to do so.
Home Secretary Suella Braverman. I'm grateful to Zoe Cohen, who's a spokesperson with Just Stop Oil, for joining me on the line now. Can I ask you, what right does your group have to put at risk people in the London area who now could become victims of crime because of the huge number of shifts spent looking after some of your colleagues? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me on. We spoke a couple of weeks ago, so I appreciate being able to come back on your show.
Thank you for coming on.
I think it's really important to get a sense of perspective here, isn't it? When we look at the Met Police's budget, which is about 3.6 billion, what we're talking about is about 0.1%.
No, so I don't know where you got that budget from. What did you say the Met Police budget was? 3.6
billion, I believe the Met Police budget is. So this is about 0.1% of the Met's budget. So we just need to keep it in perspective, really. And what's really, really important is that all of this is a political choice, Nick. You know, our government is cracking down highly repressively on protest, and there was a vote in the House of Commons last night to support this repressive move such that anything more than minor disruption will now be illegal or will shortly be illegal. I mean, this is absolutely horrific, isn't it? Whether you care about at the existential threat of climate breakdown, or whether you care about something else, more minor, basically anything more than minor disruption, in other words, any effective protest at all, will shortly be illegal. And I'm assuming that you would not like that level of repression.
No, of course I don't want it. But also, I don't see how it's fair that people who live in the London area and whose taxes go towards the funding of the Met, or who come in and work, their safety is now, in the view of the Home Secretary, being compromised because of the protests.
I mean, I would love to preface any response to anything that the Home Secretary or colleagues say in the Cabinet. We must remember that the Tory party is an extension of the oil companies.
No.
They received £3.5 million just
I don't know that I can believe
Nick.
your figures, because
Nick, 3.5...
you're calamitously wrong about the Met budget, and that's why I paused. The Metropolitan Police budget is around £28.7 million, nowhere near £3.1 billion. So
right.
your sums
I did
are not adding up.
I'm sure colleagues can fact check that. But
Well, I already have. So if we now count, no, hold on. Your colleague, no, because your sums were wrong. Your colleagues.
I don't think the whole of the Met Police's
please,
budget is 28 million. That wouldn't fund a few coppers. I think that's wrong.
Well, it's not going to fund a few coppers, is it? I think £28 million will go quite a long way. £4.5 million in 6 weeks is obviously a dent in anyone's budget. And the central point is, why should you be allowed to put Londoners' lives, homes, property at risk?
And I'm trying to make a key point here that the Conservative Party received last year £3.5 million of donations from oil
why won't you
companies,
answer the
climate deniers and
question?
polluters. Because that's the context for these comments, Nick. We are not putting people at risk. The government are putting people at risk.
If police
they are putting
officers,
people at risk every single day.
40,000
people die each year from air pollution alone, Nick.
If 13,000,
we have to get this in perspective.
If 13,000,
no,
you must let me speak.
Are.
I'm terribly sorry. If 13,770 officer shifts are being used to deal with those demonstrations, obviously those shifts are not being directed towards protecting public safety or investigating crime. So for the third time, or let me try it a different way, I'll do it differently. I don't think you have the right to do that. Whatever money might come the way of the Conservative Party from oil companies, whatever the Conservative Party might or might not have promised, you are putting people's lives at risk. People listening to my show who pay their taxes, and it's not. You seem a fair-minded person. That's not fair.
Nick, I'm an extremely fair-minded person, and thank you for saying that. It isn't fair. You're right. It's awful. None of us want to do this stuff. But when we're facing we are facing the total breakdown of law and order, Nick, because...
Well, of course you are, because you're contributing towards a breakdown.
No, sweetheart, please. I know you're an intelligent person. I know you are. And I know you've got kids and you care.
Yes.
I know you have. So please engage in reality. We are heading for at least 2.2 degrees of global heating by 2050. But that will mean the collapse of law and order. The Oxford economics, who are a leading
But you are contributing towards the collapse of law and order by
Nick,
so many coppers.
Nick, please keep a sense of perspective here. We're talking about... By 2050, Oxford Economics, please do look this up, they are looking at up to 20% of a reduction of global GDP by 2050. That's in all of our lifetimes. I may still be batting by then, and you may be still too. We're talking about breakdown of our supply chains, of law and order, collapse of the economy, collapse of our pensions, end of public services, and also the mass movement of humanity on a scale that we've never seen before. I heard the section before where people were calling in talking about migration and concerns.
Yes.
And we must have compassion for those people and why they are moving, because many people can't already live around the world.
All right.
I hope you've not muted me. But by 2070...
No, I've not muted you.
Thank you.
No, but I must move on.
I do appreciate that.
No.
I do. Please, may I finish one point?
If you can do in a final sentence, if you would, please.
I can. Peer-reviewed science shows that by 3.5 billion men, women and children will be outside livable conditions. This is mass climate genocide, and it must end. That's why we are doing this.
All right.
The government can end this. They need to stop new oil and gas. Please help us.
All right, Zoe Cohen, thank you. You're with Just Stop Oil. I need to correct the record. I was told that it was in the region of £28 million. It comes in more at 3.62 as I'm reading it now. I don't know how my colleague got the numbers wrong. We'll be talking about that later. So just to correct the record there, thank you for your input. Zoe Cohen is with Just Stop Oil. Mick Neville is a former Detective Chief Inspector and head of the Central Forensic Team at the Metropolitan Police. So he's done it. What is the reality for policing in this issue? Mick, good morning.
Good morning. Well, what I don't understand is how the police sort of overthink at the moment, like what will the courts say? These people are committing a breach of the peace, they're obstructing the highway. I don't see why they're just not arrested, put before the courts. And if the courts keep choosing to release them, then the public can take out their anger at the courts and not at the police, because we've seen time and time again the public feel that the police are not on their side. And the public take a double hit here, don't they? Because it's usually some champagne socialist wandering down the road. And it's working people who, one, they can't get to work, and secondly, the estate where they live, the drug dealers, the robbers, the thieves, the child molesters can carry on doing what they're doing because the police officers are dealing with this silly nonsense.
But their argument is there will be a breakdown of law and order if their protests are not heard and resonate around Whitehall, Mick.
Well, what I don't understand about what she's just said about 2-degree increase is that I've been to Saudi Arabia, people live there, people live in Finland. There's about 20 degrees of temperature difference there. Humans survive, and they don't riot in Saudi Arabia, and they don't riot in Finland.
Probably Dan. Is the reality there. Mick, I have to leave it there for time reasons. Mick Neville, you were Detective Chief Inspector with the Metropolitan Police. OK, those costs, just to clarify then, somewhere in the region of about £3 billion, £4.5 million in the 6 weeks, which incorporated, of course, the events at Twickenham and the Chelsea Flower Show. And according to the Home Secretary, officers not able now to deal with robbery and protection. Do they continue to have that right? 8:16 LBC News headlines. Thomas Watts.